"Watch where you're going, you incompetent fool." The voice cracked through the air like a whip. "You are 4 minutes late. 4 minutes. Do you have any idea what that costs this company?" A young woman stood frozen, trembling. Her voice came out small and strained as she clutched the straps of an old backpack. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm so sorry. My father had a medical emergency this morning. I had to take him to the hospital before I could get here. I came as fast as I could." The man's eyes narrowed with open contempt. Whatever sympathy might have existed vanished instantly. He spoke slowly now, enunciating each word with brutal precision. "I don't pay interns to have personal problems, Miss Chin," he said. "I pay you to be invisible, to do your job, and to never, ever disrupt my schedule." He glanced down at the dark stain spreading across his pristine jacket. "You've just ruined a $5,000 suit on national television," he continued. "You're fired. Get your things and get out of my building. Now." The cameras kept rolling. Only then did the full scene come into focus. The sleek marble lobby of Titan Media gleamed under crystal chandeliers, its polished floors reflecting light like a stage designed for power. Sterling Blackwood, the company's celebrated CEO, stood at the center of it all. 42 years old, immaculately groomed, his silk tie perfectly aligned, despite the coffee stain blooming across his lapel. A local news crew had been invited that morning to film a segment on his revolutionary management philosophy, something he proudly called efficiency through excellence. Sterling had mastered the art of corporate theater, and today's performance was meant to reinforce his image as a fearless leader who demanded nothing but perfection. Moments earlier, he had been mid-sentence, lecturing the reporter about accountability and punctuality, his smile flawless, his confidence effortless. Then the lobby doors had burst open. Maya Chen rushed inside, breathless and visibly shaken. At 24, she looked older in that moment, exhaustion etched into the dark circles beneath her eyes. Her simple cotton blouse was wrinkled, her hair pulled back in a hurried ponytail, and her worn sneakers squeaked against the marble floor as she hurried toward the elevators. Distracted, panicked, late, she never saw Sterling. Her shoulder collided with his arm, sending his artisanal espresso flying. The hot liquid splashed across his pristine lapel, and that's when the explosion happened. Time froze. The reporter fell silent. Nearby employees stopped mid-step. The cameras, however, never blinked. Sterling's expression shifted in an instant from polished charm to raw fury, and the outburst followed. Now, as Maya stood in front of him, the weight of the moment crashed down all at once. Her face crumpled as the realization sank in. She swallowed hard, fighting back tears, then nodded once. Without another word, she adjusted her backpack and walked toward the elevators, her head lowered, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of public humiliation. Behind her, Sterling turned smoothly back to the cameras. His smile returned as if nothing of consequence had happened. "Let's cut that part out, shall we?" he said lightly, smoothing his stained jacket with practiced ease. "Efficiency requires sacrifice." The reporter hesitated, then nodded, but the cameraman kept filming. Sterling believed he had just demonstrated leadership, authority, control. He thought he had cleaned house, shown the world that no one was above accountability. What he didn't know was that he had just fired the one person who held the keys to his kingdom. And the sick father Maya had mentioned? His name was carved in stone above the entrance of the very building Sterling stood in. Before we continue with what happened next, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. Here at Money Stories That Matter, we bring you the most powerful stories of wealth, ego, revenge, and justice. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when Maya returns to this building. Because 3 months earlier, this story had begun in a very different place. Arthur Titan lay in a private hospital room, his once robust frame reduced by the cancer, slowly claiming his life. At 68, he had built Titan Media from a small advertising firm into a multi-billion-dollar empire. But none of that mattered now as machines beeped softly beside his bed. Maya sat at his side, holding his weathered hand. "Maya, I need you to listen carefully," Arthur said, his voice still carrying the authority that had commanded boardrooms for decades. Despite his weakened state, "I don't trust Sterling Blackwood. The quarterly numbers look good on paper. Sure, profits are up. The stock price is climbing. But something's wrong. I can feel it in my bones. And it's not just the cancer talking." Maya leaned forward, her brow furrowed with concern. "What do you mean, Dad? You appointed him as interim CEO yourself when you got sick. You vetted him personally," she said. "I know, and that's what worries me," Arthur said, shifting in his bed, wincing slightly. "The man I interviewed was charming, intelligent, seemed genuinely committed to the company's values. But I've been getting calls from old employees, people who've worked at Titan for 20 years, and they're leaving. Good people, loyal people. They won't tell me why directly because they think I'm too sick to handle bad news, but I can read between the lines. The company culture is rotting from the inside." Maya felt her stomach tighten. "What do you want me to do? I could go in as vice president, audit the departments, talk to people officially," she said. Her father shook his head firmly. "No. If you walk in there, as my daughter, as an executive, everyone will lie to you. They'll tell you what they think you want to hear, or what Sterling wants you to hear. People lie to bosses, Maya, but they tell the truth to interns. They gossip around the coffee machine. They complain in the break rooms. They let their guard down around people they think don't matter," he said. Maya sat back, understanding dawning on her face. "You want me to go undercover, use Mom's maiden name," she said. "Exactly," Arthur said, squeezing her hand with what strength he had left. "Go in as Maya Chen. Be nobody. Be invisible. Serve coffee. Make copies. Do whatever grunt work they give you. Watch Sterling. Listen to everything. Find out what he's really doing to my company. And Maya, if what I suspect is true, document everything. Every conversation, every suspicious decision, every piece of evidence you can find. I need to know before I make any final decisions about succession." So Maya had done exactly that. She'd walked through those same lobby doors 3 months ago with a fake resume listing a state college degree and minimal work experience. She'd been hired as a general intern, assigned to fetch coffee and run errands for various departments. She made $12 an hour and wore the same 3 outfits in rotation, playing the part of a struggling recent graduate trying to get her foot in the door of the media industry. Nobody looked at her twice. Nobody asked about her background or her thoughts or her observations. She was furniture, a forgettable face that existed only to make their lives slightly easier. And in that invisibility, she saw everything. She saw Sterling scream at his executive assistant until the woman was shaking and crying, all because she'd scheduled a meeting 15 minutes later than he'd wanted. She watched him deliberately take credit for campaign ideas created by junior staff members, presenting them to clients as his own innovations. She noticed how he'd walk past longtime employees without acknowledgement, but would transform into a charming diplomat the moment anyone with power or money entered his orbit. She made copies of emails that showed him redirecting marketing budgets into shell consulting companies that she traced back to his college roommate. She recorded meetings where he discussed selling off Titan Media's most beloved departments, the ones that didn't generate maximum profit, but had been Arthur's passion projects, like the documentary division and the investigative journalism unit. Sterling planned to gut the company's soul and sell it piece by piece to the highest bidders, padding his own golden parachute in the process. Maya filled 3 notebooks with observations and collected a digital folder of evidence that would make any prosecutor's eyes light up. She documented harassment, financial irregularities, breach of fiduciary duty, and systematic dismantling of employee protections. She was methodical, patient, waiting for the right moment to present her findings to her father. But fate had other plans. The night of her firing, Maya drove directly from Titan Media's lobby to St. Catherine's Hospital, still wearing her coffee-stained clothes, her hands still shaking from the humiliation. She found her father's room in the private wing and pushed open the door, ready to tell him she'd been compromised, that Sterling had fired her before she could complete her mission. But the words died in her throat. The machines surrounding Arthur's bed were screaming, a horrible flatline tone that cut through the air like a knife. Nurses rushed past her into the room, and a doctor was already performing chest compressions. But Maya could see the truth in their faces. They were going through the motions for her sake, but her father was already gone. She stood frozen in the doorway as they worked for another 20 minutes before finally stepping back and turning to her with sympathetic expressions. Time of death, 9:47 p.m., the doctor said softly. "I'm very sorry for your loss, Miss Titan." Maya nodded numbly, unable to speak, unable to process that the man who had raised her, taught her everything about business and integrity and fighting for what mattered, was simply gone. She sat beside his bed for an hour, holding his still warm hand, tears streaming silently down her face. She'd been so focused on saving his company that she'd missed these final months with him. And now there would be no more time, no more conversations, no more chances to tell him she loved him. A quiet knock on the door interrupted her grief. Robert Fitzgerald, her father's attorney and close friend for 30 years, entered the room with a thick blue folder under his arm. His own eyes were red, grief evident on his weathered face. "Maya, I'm so deeply sorry," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Arthur was like a brother to me. I know this is terrible timing, but he left specific instructions that I was to give you this immediately upon his passing. No delays, no waiting period. He was very insistent." Maya took the folder with numb fingers and opened it. The first page was a letter in her father's handwriting, and just seeing those familiar loops and strokes made fresh tears spill down her cheeks. She read through blurred vision. "My darling Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer to see you take your rightful place at the helm of what we built together. But I planned for this contingency because I know my daughter, and I know you'll be tempted to grieve quietly and let others handle the business affairs. Don't. Inside this folder is what I called the Phoenix Clause, a provision I added to the corporate charter 15 years ago when you told me you wanted to join the business. Upon my death, 51% of Titan Media's voting shares transfer immediately and irrevocably to you. The current board of directors is automatically dissolved, and all executive appointments, including the CEO position, are suspended pending your review and decision. You don't need anyone's permission, Maya. You don't need to wait for lawyers or board meetings or shareholder votes. As of the moment I died, you became the majority owner and controlling authority of Titan Media. The company is yours. I trust you to know what to do with it. Make me proud. All my love, Dad. Maya read the letter 3 times, then carefully reviewed the legal documents that followed. Everything was ironclad, drafted by the best corporate attorneys money could buy. Robert had already filed the necessary paperwork with the Securities and Exchange Commission. By law, Sterling Blackwood and his entire board had been automatically terminated the moment Arthur's heart stopped beating. They just didn't know it yet. Maya wiped her tears and felt something shift inside her chest, a transformation from grief-stricken daughter to something harder and more focused. She thought about Sterling's face as he'd humiliated her in front of those cameras, how he'd dismissed her father's medical emergency as an inconvenient excuse, how he'd treated her like garbage to be discarded. He'd made a mistake, a catastrophic miscalculation born of arrogance and cruelty, and now he was going to pay for it. She looked at Robert, and when she spoke, her voice was steady and cold. Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't inform Mr. Blackwood or any of the current executives about my father's passing or about the ownership transfer. I want them to find out when I walk into that room, Maya said. Robert's eyes widened slightly, but then a small, grim smile crossed his face. Arthur said you'd be formidable when the time came. He was right. I'll make the arrangements. Do you need anything else? He said. Maya stood, smoothing her wrinkled clothes with new purpose. Yes, call my father's head of security and have him assign a detail to me effective immediately. Then contact our public relations team and have them pull any footage of today's incident in the lobby before the news station airs it. I want that video, and I want it tonight. Finally, prepare a comprehensive briefing on all current board members and executive staff. I want to know everything about them before tomorrow morning, she said. Robert nodded and pulled out his phone. Consider it done. And Maya, for what it's worth, your father would be very proud of what you're about to do, he said. That night, Maya didn't sleep. She went home to her modest apartment, showered, and then laid out her strategy with military precision. She reviewed every note she'd taken during her 3 months undercover, cross-referenced them with financial documents Robert provided, and prepared a presentation that would leave no room for doubt or defense. She selected a charcoal gray suit from the back of her closet, one she'd bought for her business school graduation but had never worn. She practiced her entrance, her posture, the exact words she would use. By 6 a.m., she was ready. The sun rose over Titan Media's headquarters, and Maya arrived at 7:30, 30 minutes before the meeting she'd called. She entered through the executive entrance this time, not the employee doors she'd used for 3 months. Security recognized her immediately, not as the fired intern, but as Arthur Titan's daughter. And they snapped to attention. She rode the private elevator to the 20th floor boardroom, her heels clicking against marble with authority she'd kept hidden for so long. Inside the boardroom, Sterling Blackwood was holding court, laughing with the other executives who'd arrived early. He was in rare form, energized by what he perceived as yesterday's demonstration of leadership. And then I fired that clumsy intern right in front of the news cameras, he said, grinning widely. It was perfect. Shows I don't tolerate incompetence at any level. The stock will probably jump another 2 points when word gets out. The other executives laughed sycophantically, nodding their agreement, praising his decisiveness. They were so absorbed in their self-congratulation that they didn't notice when the boardroom's double doors opened. Security entered first, 4 professional bodyguards in dark suits who positioned themselves at strategic points around the room. Then Maya walked in, and the laughter died instantly. She looked nothing like the exhausted, disheveled intern from yesterday. Her suit was impeccably tailored, her hair styled with corporate precision, her makeup subtle but polished. She carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of someone who owned not just the room, but the entire building. She moved to the head of the table, to the chair that had been her father's and that Sterling had been occupying for the past 6 months. Sterling stood abruptly, his face flushing with confusion and anger. What the hell is this? What is the intern doing here? Security, remove this woman immediately, Sterling shouted. None of the security team moved. They stood perfectly still, eyes forward, awaiting Maya's orders. Sterling's confusion deepened, turning to something that might have been the first flutter of fear. Maya set her briefcase on the table and spoke for the first time, her voice clear and commanding. Nothing like the meek apology she'd offered yesterday. They don't work for you anymore, Mr. Blackwood. In fact, nobody in this room works for you. Nobody in this building works for you. As of 9:47 p.m. last night, you ceased to have any authority whatsoever over Titan Media or any of its subsidiaries, Maya said. Sterling's face went from red to pale. What are you talking about? I'm the CEO of this company. Stop this nonsense right now, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing, he said. Maya reached into her briefcase and removed the blue folder, sliding it across the polished table toward him. It landed with a decisive thud directly in front of his chair. You were the interim CEO of my company, Mr. Blackwood. Allow me to properly introduce myself. My name is Maya Titan, and as of last night, I am the majority shareholder and owner of Titan Media, she said. Sterling grabbed the folder with shaking hands, his eyes scanning the documents inside. Maya watched as his expression shifted from disbelief to shock to dawning horror. The other executives leaned in, reading over his shoulder, their own faces draining of color as they realized what they were seeing. That's impossible, Sterling whispered, though his voice lacked conviction. Arthur Titan was sick, but he wasn't dying. This has to be a forgery. My father passed away last night, Maya said, her voice steady despite the grief that still sat heavy in her chest. The Phoenix Clause in the corporate charter was activated automatically upon his death. All existing board positions were dissolved, and all executive appointments were suspended pending my review. Everything in that folder has been filed with the SEC and is a matter of public record as of midnight. You'll be able to verify it yourself within the hour when the markets open. Sterling sank into his chair, the folder slipping from his fingers. The room was absolutely silent, except for the quiet hum of the climate control system. Maya let the moments stretch, let them fully absorb the magnitude of the power shift that had just occurred. Then she continued, her tone becoming colder, more cutting. Yesterday, you fired me for being 4 minutes late to a $12 an hour internship. You humiliated me on camera, dismissed my father's medical emergency as irrelevant, and told me I was being paid to be invisible. Today, I arrived 10 minutes early to accept your resignation, Maya said. Sterling's head snapped up, panic flooding his features. Maya, Miss Titan, please. I had no idea who you were. It was a misunderstanding. I was stressed. The cameras were there. I wasn't thinking clearly. We can work this out. You've seen the numbers. I'd made this company incredibly profitable. We can sit down and discuss this like professionals, he said. Maya's expression didn't change. She opened her briefcase again and removed a thick binder, placing it on the table with deliberate care. You've made this company profitable by destroying everything my father built. I spent 3 months serving your coffee, Mr. Blackwood, and in that time, I was invisible just like you wanted. And because I was invisible, I saw everything, she said. She opened the binder to the first tabbed section. I saw you verbally abuse employees until they quit rather than file formal complaints. I have 17 documented incidents of workplace harassment, including 3 that meet the legal definition of creating a hostile work environment, she said. She flipped to another section. I saw you take credit for other people's work and present it as your own to clients, which constitutes fraud. I have emails, meeting recordings, and testimony from the actual creators of those campaigns, she said. Another section. I saw you redirect company funds to shell corporations owned by your associates, padding consulting contracts and kickback schemes that have cost Titan Media approximately $14 million over 6 months. I have transaction records, bank statements, and communications that detail every illegal transfer, she said. Sterling's face was now completely white, sweat beading on his forehead. You can't prove any of that. You're making accusations you can't back up, he said. Maya pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. The boardroom's video display came to life, showing security footage from various locations throughout the building. This is from the 5th floor break room 2 months ago, she said as the video played. The footage showed Sterling cornering a young female employee, his body language aggressive and threatening as he berated her for a minor mistake. The woman was visibly crying, backing away from him, and when she tried to leave, he blocked her path and continued his tirade for another 8 minutes. The audio was crystal clear, capturing every demeaning word. Maya played 3 more clips, each showing similar incidents, each more damning than the last. Then she switched to email records, highlighted passages appearing on the screen, showing Sterling's instructions to inflate expense reports and hide them in departmental budgets. Financial spreadsheets show discrepancies between reported and actual expenditures, with the missing funds traced to accounts Sterling controlled. The evidence was overwhelming, methodical, and absolutely irrefutable. Maya had documented everything with the precision of a prosecutor building a case, because that's exactly what she'd done. I've compiled all of this into a comprehensive report, Maya said, gesturing to the binder. Copies have been delivered to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Department of Justice, and the District Attorney's Office as of 7 a.m. this morning. You're not just fired, Mr. Blackwood. You're under criminal investigation for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and workplace harassment. As if on cue, the boardroom doors opened again, and 2 police detectives entered, badges displayed on their belts. Sterling Blackwood stood on shaking legs, his face a mask of disbelief. This can't be happening. You can't do this to me. I have lawyers. I have connections. I'll fight this and I'll win, Sterling said. Maya looked at him with an expression that held no sympathy, no satisfaction, just cold finality. You're welcome to try, but I'd suggest you save your legal fees for your criminal defense rather than a wrongful termination suit you have no chance of winning, she said. The detective stepped forward and addressed Sterling directly. Mr. Blackwood, we need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding financial irregularities at Titan Media. You're not under arrest at this time, but we strongly advise you to contact your attorney, the detective said. Sterling looked around the room desperately, seeking support from the other executives, but they all avoided his gaze. They were already calculating their own survival, distancing themselves from the sinking ship. He grabbed his suit jacket from the back of his chair with trembling hands and walked toward the detectives, his earlier confidence completely shattered. At the doorway, he turned back one last time. I made you rich, he said to Maya, his voice bitter. Titan Media's stock price doubled under my leadership. Your father would still be running a mid-tier company if not for me. Maya met his eyes without flinching. My father built a company that people were proud to work for. You built a quarterly earnings report. There's a difference, she said. Sterling opened his mouth to respond, then seemed to think better of it. He turned and left with the detectives, and the boardroom doors closed behind him. With a soft click that sounded like a judge's gavel, Maya turned to address the remaining executives, all of whom were now watching her with expressions ranging from fear to cautious respect. She let the silence build for a moment before speaking. Does anyone else have comments about the efficiency of interns? Or perhaps thoughts about how we should treat employees who arrive 4 minutes late due to family emergencies? Maya asked. No one spoke. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, no doubt mentally reviewing their own conduct over the past months and wondering if they'd also been observed and documented. Maya's gaze swept across each face, reading them, measuring them. Some would stay, she decided. Some would go. But first, there was work to do. This company needs a complete reset, Maya continued. Over the next week, I'll be conducting individual meetings with each department head. I want honest assessments of what's broken and what's working. I want to hear from the employees Sterling silenced. I want transparency, accountability, and a return to the values my father founded this company on. She paused, her expression softening slightly. I know many of you are worried about your positions. Some of you should be. But I'm not interested in wholesale termination or revenge. I'm interested in rebuilding a culture of respect and excellence. If you've been complicit in Sterling's abuses, now would be the time to come forward and make it right. If you've been silent out of fear, I understand, and I want to create an environment where speaking up is safe and encouraged. We're going to fix this one decision at a time, she said. The meeting was dismissed, and the executives filed out quietly. Their earlier jovial mood completely evaporated. Maya stood alone in the boardroom, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city skyline. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman who looked both exactly like and nothing like the intern who'd been fired 24 hours earlier. That afternoon, Maya sat in the CEO's office for the first time, a space that still smelled faintly of Sterling's expensive cologne. She'd had his personal items packed and removed, replacing them with the photographs and mementos from her father's home office. On the desk now sat a picture of Arthur Titan from his early days, standing in front of a tiny rented office space with a hand-painted sign reading Titan Advertising. His smile in that photo was genuine, full of hope and determination, untainted by the cynicism that sometimes came with decades of corporate battles. Maya ran her finger along the frame, feeling the weight of legacy and responsibility settle onto her shoulders. There was a gentle knock on the door, and Margaret Harrison entered hesitantly. Margaret had been her father's executive assistant for 22 years, and Maya had watched Sterling treat her with casual cruelty, dismissing her decades of institutional knowledge and treating her as nothing more than a glorified receptionist. Miss Titan, Margaret said formally, though her eyes were red from crying. I wanted to express my condolences about your father. He was an extraordinary man, and I'll miss him terribly. Maya stood and gestured to the chair across from her desk. Please, sit down, Margaret. And it's Maya. We have a lot of work ahead of us, she said. Margaret sat, her posture perfect, hands folded in her lap. She'd weathered Sterling's regime with dignity intact, but Maya could see the toll it had taken. The older woman looked tired, diminished from the confident, professional Maya remembered from childhood visits to the office. "I'd like to start by apologizing," Maya said, and Margaret's eyes widened in surprise. "I spent 3 months in this building watching Sterling mistreat you and others, and I said nothing. I was gathering evidence, yes, but that doesn't change the fact that I stood by while good people were hurt. I should have acted sooner." Margaret's professional composure cracked slightly, tears welling in her eyes. "You did what you had to do, and you did it right. Arthur would be so proud of you. And if I may say so, watching Sterling get escorted out by police this morning was worth every indignity of the past 6 months," she said. Maya smiled, despite herself, the first genuine expression of emotion she'd allowed since entering the building that morning. "I need your help, Margaret. I need someone who knows this company inside and out, someone who understands the culture my father built and can help me restore it. Will you stay on as my executive assistant? I promise you'll be treated with the respect you deserve," she said. Margaret nodded, wiping her eyes. "It would be my honor. Where do we start?" she said. They started by calling in the heads of each department, beginning with those Maya had identified as Sterling's primary victims. She met with the head of the documentary division, who broke down in tears of relief when Maya promised the department wouldn't be sold off. She spoke with the investigative journalism team, who'd been operating under constant threat of budget cuts, and assured them their funding would not only continue but increase. She sat with the young woman from the security footage, the one Sterling had cornered in the break room, and personally apologized for not intervening sooner, then offered her a promotion to a position where she'd never have to interact with hostile management. Again, word spread quickly through the building. The intern who'd been fired was actually the owner's daughter. Sterling was under criminal investigation. The company was being restored to its original values. Employees who'd been planning their exits suddenly reconsidered. People who'd been silenced found their voices again. The culture began to shift almost immediately, like a plant that had been dying in darkness, suddenly exposed to sunlight. But Maya knew the real work was just beginning. Profits would likely dip in the short term as she reinvested in people and quality over pure efficiency. There would be difficult conversations with shareholders who'd grown accustomed to Sterling's numbers. There would be legal battles as Sterling fought the charges against him. There would be moments of doubt and exhaustion and grief as she navigated leadership while mourning her father. Yet, sitting in that office, with Margaret helping her plan the company's future, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in months. She felt hope. She felt purpose. She felt ready. 1 week later, Maya stood at a podium in the main conference hall, addressing the entire company for the first time as CEO. The room was packed. Employees crowded in to hear what the mysterious new leader would say. Maya looked out at the sea of faces, some hopeful, some skeptical, all watching her closely. She thought about her father's letter, about his trust in her judgment, about the legacy she'd inherited. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady and clear. "My name is Maya Titan, and for those of you who didn't know, I spent the last 3 months working here as an intern under the name Maya Chen. I'm not going to pretend that experience gave me a complete understanding of everyone's challenges, but it gave me something valuable. It showed me what this company looks like from the bottom up, and what I saw both broke my heart and gave me hope." A murmur ran through the crowd. Maya continued, unbothered. "I saw good people doing excellent work despite being undervalued and mistreated. I saw creativity being stifled by fear. I saw efficiency being prioritized over humanity. But I also saw resilience, loyalty, and a deep, commitment to the work we do here. You didn't give up on this company even when leadership gave up on you, and that's what's going to carry us forward," she said. Maya outlined her vision for Titan Media's future, a return to quality journalism and creative excellence, combined with sustainable business practices and a culture of respect. She announced the formation of an employee council that would have direct input into company policy. She revealed plans for improved benefits, mental health resources, and professional development opportunities. She promised transparency in decision-making and accountability at all levels, starting with herself. And she made one thing absolutely clear. We're going to measure success differently now. Yes, we need to be profitable. Yes, we need to be competitive. But we're also going to measure success by how we treat each other, by the quality of our work, and by the positive impact we have on our industry and our community. If we do those things right, the profits will follow. It won't always be easy, but it will be worth it, she said. The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. People stood, and Maya felt tears prick her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not yet. There would be time for tears later, in private, when she could properly mourn her father and everything that had been lost. But in this moment, she needed to be strong, to be the leader these people deserved. After the meeting, Maya returned to her office and found a package on her desk. Inside was the video footage from Sterling's firing of her in the lobby, along with a note from the news station's cameraman. "I thought you should have this. What he did wasn't right. Congratulations on your new position." Maya loaded the video onto her computer and watched it once, seeing herself from an outside perspective. She looked small in that footage, diminished and defeated, a young woman being crushed under the weight of power wielded without compassion. But she also saw something else in her own eyes, even in that moment of humiliation. She saw strength. She saw determination. She saw someone who knew her worth regardless of how others treated her. Maya saved the video in a secure folder. She wouldn't publish it or use it for revenge. Sterling's legal troubles would be punishment enough, but she would keep it as a reminder, a before snapshot to contrast with who she'd become. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Maya sat at her desk and pulled out her phone. She composed a message to her mother, who was traveling abroad and had missed Arthur's final days. The message was simple. "Dad's gone. The company is mine. I'm going to make him proud." She hit send and then opened her laptop to review the next day's schedule. There were budget meetings, personnel decisions, strategy sessions, and a dozen other tasks that came with running a multi-billion-dollar company. It was overwhelming. But Maya had learned something important during her 3 months as an invisible intern. She'd learned that real leadership wasn't about having all the answers or projecting invulnerability. It was about listening, learning, staying humble enough to see the truth even when it was uncomfortable, and having the courage to make hard decisions in service of something larger than yourself. Sterling had failed because he'd believed his position made him superior to those he led. He'd forgotten the fundamental truth that her father had lived by. Character isn't shown by how you treat people who can help you. It's shown by how you treat people who seemingly can't do anything for you at all. Because those are the moments when your true nature reveals itself. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you completely? Maybe a boss, a teacher, someone in authority who dismissed you without seeing your real value? Drop a comment below and share your story. The Money Stories That Matter community loves hearing about how you proved the doubters wrong. And if you haven't already subscribed to Money Stories That Matter, now's the time. Hit that subscribe button because we've got more incredible stories coming your way. about justice, karma, and the sweet satisfaction of seeing arrogance get its comeuppance. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we have planned. Maya's first year as CEO wasn't easy. There were setbacks and challenges, moments when she questioned her decisions and wondered if she was truly ready for the responsibility she'd inherited. The stock price did dip initially, just as she'd predicted, and some shareholders grumbled about the shift away from pure profit maximization. Sterling's criminal trial made headlines, painting Titan Media in an unflattering light as prosecutors laid out the evidence of his fraud and abuse. There were nights when Maya worked until dawn trying to solve problems that seemed insurmountable, and mornings when she woke up exhausted and grieving, wondering if she had the strength to continue. But there were victories, too. The documentary division won 3 major awards for a series on climate change that Sterling would have killed as unprofitable. The investigative journalism team broke a story about government corruption that led to actual policy reform. Employee satisfaction scores climbed steadily upward as the culture of fear was dismantled and replaced with genuine collaboration. And slowly, methodically, the company's reputation began to shift from a cautionary tale about corporate greed to an example of ethical leadership in action. On the first anniversary of her father's death, Maya stood in front of the building at sunrise, looking up at the carved stone letters that spelled out Titan Media. She thought about the young woman who'd rushed through these doors in coffee-stained clothes, who'd been humiliated and fired and broken-hearted. That woman seemed like a different person now, someone from another lifetime, though only a year had passed. Maya had changed in ways she was still discovering, hardened in some places, softened in others, shaped by responsibility and grief and the satisfaction of meaningful work. She thought about Sterling Blackwood, currently serving a 6-year sentence for fraud and embezzlement, his reputation destroyed, his wealth depleted by legal fees and court-ordered restitution. She felt no particular satisfaction in his downfall, no sense of triumphant revenge. His punishment was the natural consequence of his choices, and she'd simply been the instrument of accountability. What she felt instead was gratitude, strange as it seemed, gratitude that she'd been invisible long enough to see the truth, that her father had trusted her with his legacy, that she'd been given the chance to make a difference. Maya entered the building and took the elevator to the 20th floor. In the boardroom, Margaret had already set up for the morning's executive meeting. Fresh coffee and pastries arranged on the sideboard. Agenda packets at each seat. Through the windows, the city was waking up. Thousands of people beginning their days, chasing dreams, fighting battles, building lives. Maya took her seat at the head of the table, not her father's seat anymore, but her own, earned through hard work and painful lessons, and the courage to be underestimated. She opened her laptop and reviewed her notes for the meeting, ready to face whatever challenges the day would bring. And in that moment, sitting in the quiet boardroom before the chaos of leadership resumed, Maya Titan smiled. She'd learned the most important lesson anyone in power could learn. Never forget what it felt like to be invisible, because those who seem to have the least power often see the most truth, and the people you dismiss today might be the ones who change your world tomorrow. Treat everyone with dignity, not because of what they can do for you, but because it's the right thing to do, and because you never really know who's watching, who's learning, who's documenting everything you do and say. Sterling had learned that lesson far too late, but Maya would carry it with her for the rest of her life.